Hi, I'm super excited to be here. One of the fancy features of my new job at Cornell Tech is that I'm actually Technion faculty, so it's actually a homecoming, even though, I have a really interesting background. I actually have an undergraduate in mechanical engineering and product design, a master's degree in media arts and sciences from the Media Lab, a PhD in mechanical engineering, and then I taught in a design school for many years. And now I'm faculty in information science. I think that as an interaction design researcher, you're always making up your discipline as you go. And so people always say, I didn't know that this is what interaction designers do, or this is what mechanical engineers do. And the thing is, nobody is doing the things that we're doing if what you're doing is research, because you're always on the leading edge. So I'm going to show a few things that explain my background before I get into this topic, which is addressing cross-cultural differences in design. I'm coming at, the focus of my research is looking at how people interact with automation, which is something that we know is going to be kind of an increasing feature of our future. Maybe it's the next industrial revolution. And I think this is a place where designers as leaders also have to have some humility, because we don't actually know what the future holds, and more importantly, we don't understand how things will change when they're in the wild. So a lot of what we do in my research is try to prototype the future and elicit naturalistic responses from people to understand how we should actually design things. So here's an example of that. Methodologically, as research, what we're performing are field experiments to understand how different people are going to interact with robots. So this is a trash can robot. We make a lot of different robot form factors, but maybe the most important form factor for future robots right now is that of the autonomous car. First of all, this is just an area that has gotten a lot of attention. It's something that's going to happen in waves, but it's something that we are already encountering on public roadways in different parts of the world, and it's growing. But it's also a lead vehicle for other kinds of interaction that are going to follow, that literally the design patterns that are made in the autonomous vehicle space will be repeated as we kind of have other kinds of automation. So it's really important to understand and design well. So in my role as both designer, researcher, and engineer, we use a lot of simulation. This is a driving simulator that we have at Cornell Tech. This car is actually on the 3rd floor of a building with a door about that size. It's really important to stage different kinds of futures and bring in different kinds of people and look at their reactions. And coming up with clever ways to stage those futures allows us to answer new and important questions. So it's important to think about what are those questions and then how do we actually stage it. So some of the things that we do are come up with, think of different ways of simulating the future, like to look at how people behave on the road. How can we simulate things so that you can drive a legal car where it's actually a person driving, make it feel like an autonomous car. This is something I think I'm really proud of.
Kind of okay?
What you thinking about using VR?
Yeah, like, does it feel like I'm in a car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Can you put your hands out forward?
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
And just leave them kind of center in your vision. And now you can just, like, if you drive straight, you
Sure.
should be going just.
Oh, this is fucking weird. I should probably not drop the F-bomb. Oh God. Oh God.
You just. It was funny. Like there was a car hitting them in VR.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh God.
There
Now we
was-
drove off the world.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
So the guy who's really driving the actual car doesn't know anything about what's going on in the simulated world, but in simulation, they actually staged a car accident, and you can actually see how a person would respond if they were in a situation like that. They have all the kind of realness of the situation because they can feel the physical motion, but yeah, but they're actually safe. So the main insight I'm going to focus in on is how interaction with automation is actually a cross-cultural problem. And so a problem between the culture of the language of machines and engineers and the language that we all, the rest of us, speak. Normally when we think about cross-cultural differences in design, we think about things like this, just different ways we would do branding, or there are these apocryphal stories about how if you name your thing, your product the wrong thing, like this is a Chevy Nova, that in a different culture that the words can be really bad luck because it means like the car doesn't go. But I think when we start to have products that have behavior, the differences in how the products behave in different cultures will become more important. And so in my space, one of the things that's a huge problem is that engineers tend to think just about the culture they're used to. So this is a quote from Rafi Krikorian, who ran Uber ATC until pretty recently. And he said, if we can drive an autonomous car in Pittsburgh, we can drive anywhere. So I rented a car and actually drove from Tel Aviv here. It's different than driving California or New York City. And so when he says anywhere, I really think, really? Anywhere? Ireland? India? Tel Aviv? Even in California, where they have good weather and like relatively good road rules and things like that, we've had huge problems. The people who make self-driving cars emphasize that self-driving cars get into fewer accidents, at-fault accidents, than normal drivers, but it turns out they get into more accidents. And in fact, they get rear-ended 10 times as much as normal drivers. So if you rear-end someone, you think like, it was your fault, legally it's your fault. If you find out that that person is rear-ended 10 times more than a normal person, you stop feeling like it's your fault, and I don't think it is. And one of the really frustrating things is that the engineering companies think that what we need to do as people is all get used to driving around autonomous cars, that we will learn to drive around autonomous cars, and soon we will all drive the way the autonomous cars do. And I think that's a mistake. Maybe it's a possible thing to have happen, but I think what's more likely to happen is this sort of thing. In Arizona, there are already people attacking self-driving cars. They literally are wielding rocks and knives. And maybe some of those people are concerned about their livelihood, but I can say as someone who's driven around the self-driving cars, it's very possible they're just doing this because the cars drive like assholes. They literally stop for too long or sometimes too quick. They don't signal their intent, they just drive. So we're doing this thing at both the Technion and in New York, where we're looking at how we can come up with novel ways of simulating present-day differences in culture so we can actually capture the differences that we all know about, but actually make them actionable by engineers who are working on autonomous cars. So this is the setup. We actually have 2 people wearing VR displays, and they're both kind of like in Mario Kart in the same world, but they're all driving their own cars. This is from a pilot study we ran in January. This is actually video from Professor Avi Parouche, who I've been working with. And what you're going to see is both these women are driving in their own virtual cars. They have a leap motion in front of their VR glasses so they can see their hands modeled in the virtual world. And what we're going to see on the screen behind the researcher is what the woman on the right with the goggles sees. So this is in Hebrew because it's happening here in the Technion. So this woman can see it and just being taken over. After they get through the intersection, they fill out a survey with their eyes about how well that interaction went. So we're halfway through. We actually have run all the participants for this study in New York, and we're actively collecting participants now here at the Technion. And so I think what we're trying to do with this setup is to profile these differences in behavior interaction and start to think about how to design the machines that can fit in culturally instead of making us want to like throw knives and stones at them. So with that, I'm going to say thank you.